Jadi kita bakal nonton video ini. Videonya dari Kurzgesagt lagi. Aku nggak tahu cara ngebacanya gimana. Ini adalah videonya lagi trending, jadi lumayan lah. Juga emang video dia bagus-bagus kan. Terus ini adalah mengenai saat waktu menjadi sejarah di human era, waktunya di saat ini, di saat semuanya udah zaman sekarang ini sudah menjadi sebuah sejarah gitu. Kalian bisa tonton juga di videonya, bisa nonton sendiri atau ini gue bakal nonton juga. Let's go.
Imagine someone coming into your kitchen and taking a few tools, a pan, and your garbage. Then they bury everything in the woods. 12,000 years later, an archaeologist is trying to figure out who you were, what was important to you,
Jadi zaman sekarang udah selesai dianggap.
what you believed in, and what informed your decisions. Because you happened to live during a remarkable time in human history. The planetary revolution, when humanity transitioned, becoming a multi-planetary species. In that time, our numbers would explode by orders of magnitude. Our technology and standard of living would
tinggal di Mars, di planet lain, atau gimana gitu.
And our self-conception would change forever. And all the future archaeologist has to learn about is your junk in the woods.
While
we can only hope that this will be someone's problem in 12,000 years, we have the same problem today. We're trying to reconstruct a revolution that took place 12,000 years ago. Today, only shadows remain of the people who experienced our distant past as their present. What remains from our past?
Apa yang tersisa dari masa lalu?
Our present in crispy 4K, in color and sound. 3 generations ago, the world was just black and white.
Yeah.
One more generation and we see the world through blurred photographs. Further back, paintings and texts become our main way of experiencing the past. A mere 20 generations before us today, every written word had to be copied by hand, and reports became more scarce and less
sekarang udah
reliable.
ditulis tangan.
The first historian lived a mere 100 generations ago. Before him, there are only epics and legends, and dead kings bragging on pieces of stone. 250 generations ago, there are only fragments left in the ground and images stripped of their original meaning. Eventually, humanity becomes basically invisible. Still, we do know some things about our ancestors. Let's try to tell their story and what it means for us today. The greatest transition in human history. For some 2 million years, or roughly 80,000 generations, the life of our ancestors was basically the same. It was around 20,000 years, or 800 generations ago, that the behaviorally modern humans began a process that would change our lifestyle forever. At first, gradually, for some of us, then faster for more of us, and then, suddenly, for almost all of us. Back then, there were about 1 million modern humans on Earth. Most other human species had died out, probably with a little help from us. Our ancestors' biology had given them the necessary tools. A general intelligence to understand things, a social intelligence to understand each other, and language to express abstract...
Tunggu bentarnya ini, kok bisa naik ya ke atasan gini? Posisi close captionnya ini. Option, font size. Bisa ya.
Abstract ideas and create new concepts. These were people just like you. They suffered and experienced joy, were bored, cried and laughed. They lived in communities of a few dozen people. They controlled fire and had tools made from wood, stone and bone, told stories, mourned their dead, and created art. They traded with other tribes, from obsidian to shellfish. Some hunted big game and were very mobile, others relied more on plants they collected, and others mostly stayed in one area with an abundance of seafood. This was the common state of humanity for most of our history, until a slow transition, step by step, turned into a revolution.
Saat
Step by step,
apa ya,
the
berubah
first solid
menjadi
evidence
pabrik,
for this stems from the
masa-masa
Jordan Valley,
revolusi
where
itu
our
pabrik.
ancestors collected wild wheat more than 20,000 years ago. They noticed that seeds in the ground made more plants the next year. If they put good ones in one place, the next year they had more of the good ones. This was a great supplement to hunting and gathering. You could prepare some crops, return next year, build a temporary settlement, and have a secure food supply. Our ancestors used these birch
Mereka
crops to bake the
tanpa
first
ngebuat,
bread and
tanpa
brew the
ngebeli
first beer.
makanan.
With every generation, they gathered
Sampai sekarang
deeper
juga
knowledge
masih ada
about
sih
the
orang-orang
plants
kayak
and
gitu.
animals around them and how to manipulate them to their advantage. But there was a lot to learn. Very slowly, from generation to generation, pockets of knowledge expanded and were passed along to be expanded again. This early agriculture started to drastically reduce the space our ancestors needed to feed one individual, which made it possible to stay in one place longer. Around 12,000 years ago, these little pieces of progress had reached a critical mass. Most of the calories we consume today stem from about 15 different founder crops that humans began to domesticate in earnest in the next few thousand years. What we call the agricultural revolution was not a thing that began suddenly one day. It was a slow process driven by small groups over many generations. Eventually, gradual change gave rise to a new era. The human era. During
Era
the
ini
next few
sekarang.
thousand years, progress would speed up and turn hunter-gatherers into farmers who lived in villages, towns, and then cities. When farmers moved into new areas, they replaced the nomadic tribes or turned them into farmers too. This was neither easy nor painless. In the early days, people had a diverse diet made up of up to 250 different plants and animals. For some of the groups transitioning to agriculture, the variation in their diets declined drastically, and some even seemed to have been undernourished. And living close together and with animals created a breeding ground for disease. Virtually every infectious disease caused by microorganisms that have adapted to humans arose in the last 10,000 years.
Benar juga sih, penyakit itu malah didatengin dari gara-gara manusia.
Mortality, especially among children, rose drastically. Still, our numbers grew because living in the same place enabled women to bear far more children than before, and for a farmer, more kids mean more hands to work the fields. Even with more people dying younger, villages and
Asia banget
towns grew.
pemikirannya.
The number of
Semakin banyak
humans
anak,
on Earth
semakin banyak orang yang
exploded.
kerja.
About 100 generations after the beginning of the human era, there were already 4 million of us. This increased the need for food and forced people to come up with ever more efficient ways of producing calories, solidifying our new lifestyle. Going back to hunting and gathering would have just meant death by starvation for most. One question remains unanswered. Why? Why would people exchange the freedom of living off nature with a huge variety in food for the grind of agriculture and often more limited diets? Nobody knows for sure. Climate change seems to have made the transition possible, and some scientists argue that it was caused by external factors like undernourishment or overpopulation, both highly contested. Today, the most widely accepted idea is that it was a deliberate choice made by countless communities around the globe. Maybe it's also connected with what makes us human, the ability to come together, develop shared identities, and exchange stories and knowledge. Some archaeologists think that groups of hunter-gatherers traveled long and far to celebrate, to hold feasts and rituals. They would have used these occasions to talk about their version of innovation, better hunting and tool-making techniques, how to catch and breed animals, and which plants could be collected and multiplied. Maybe they even exchanged seeds. It's not unlikely that these gatherings were the catalyst that spread the knowledge of agriculture through the many
Masih ada
isolated
barter,
groups of
belum ada uang.
humanity, ultimately ending a lifestyle that was common to our species for thousands of generations. So by being able to come together, celebrate, share and learn from one another, these humans might have taken the steps that led to our modern world, and we have much to be grateful for. We are still the same humans today, even if it
True.
often doesn't feel that way. Maybe it's time to come together to share what we know and celebrate our existence once again, to begin another peaceful transition, maybe the planetary revolution that will change everything once more. So, hopefully, in another 12,000 years, our descendants will look back on us today with gratitude for the amazing world they are able to inhabit. To celebrate the achievements of our ancestors in the last 12,000 years and to look with hope towards the next 12,000, we present you with the 5th Human Era calendar for the year 12,021.
Jadi sebenarnya tuh
This time,
pasti manusia itu punya kelebihan atau kekurangan masing-masing. Kita nggak bisa ngebilang bahwa semua manusia itu mempunyai sama misalnya. Jangan anggaplah suatu negara. Setiap orang aja dalam satu negara itu pasti memiliki kelebihan masing-masing. Gitu. Punya kesukaannya masing-masing. Makanya kita bisa bertukar ilmu di situ. Benernya kayak gitu. Bahwa manusia itu punya standar yang berbeda-beda gitu. Dengan apa yang dia suka. Bagus. Tapi gimana ya coba ya, 12.000 tahun ke depan gitu. Gimana bumi ini masih? Gimana Indonesia coba? 12.000 tahun ke depan. Apa masih ada internet kayak gimana? Udah berapa Mbps? Komputer? Apakah lebih mobile gitu kan? Well, gak ada yang tahu. Oke, sampai sini aja. Bye-bye dan terima kasih.